Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by The Butler.
Does our story today feature one?
No,
A bad dad joke is coming, isn't it?
could be.
Lay it on me.
My friend hired a butler.
Oh, really?
Yep, but he doesn't have a left arm.
Okay.
Serves him right.
The telephone circuits are humming with calls radiating out from FBI headquarters in Chicago to agents in the West. As our scene opens, we hear...
Denver FBI, Knox speaking.
Hello, Knox. This is Sam Judson in Chicago reporting a jewel theft.
I'm listening.
Mr. Digby, president of Giles Department Store here, reported it a short while ago. They're selling the Babson collection of jewels.
Some nice rocks in that batch, I'll bet.
Yes, and one of them is missing. A fabulous diamond bracelet.
Where do we go from there?
It seems that the bracelet was first missed about 3:30. Several customers have been interested during the afternoon. One man in particular stands out in the clerk's mind.
Well, what's his description?
About 50, gray hair, bushy eyebrows, and penetrating brown eyes. Very distinguished.
Anything unusual?
Yes, a slight French accent.
Well, where does the Denver Bureau fit into the puzzle?
Maybe it doesn't, but the chief wants all the westbound trains checked to see if we can locate the Frenchman. Assuming that the thief was in Giles' store in Chicago around 3:30 and left for the west on the first train, he would have caught the 5:30. When she goes through Denver, get aboard and see what you can see.
Well, how do you figure he left Chicago on a train and is heading for the coast?
It is pretty flimsy evidence, but oddly enough, he took the clerk's name. Said on his return from the west coast he would stop in again.
Can you beat that for boldness? Well, you may be right after all about his being on one of the western-bound trains.
That's for you to find out, my boy. Good luck.
Thanks, Judson. See you soon, I hope. I beg your pardon, but haven't I seen you somewhere before?
I believe it not, monsieur.
Funny, though. I thought I might have seen you in Chicago.
I have never been there myself. I passed through only on this train yesterday for the first time. I wish we had time to get off and look around.
Oh,
but
you're
we could not.
traveling with someone else, huh?
Oh, yes, my wife, Madame Bedeau, and I left New York together several days ago.
Where you bound?
For the West Coast.
Well, I hope your business isn't too pressing, because I'm going to have to ask you to get off at the next stop with me.
Oh, but monsieur, this is some sort of a joke. 1 minute you wish to be my friend, the next minute my enemy.
On the contrary, Mr. Badeau, I'm an agent of the FBI, and your description fits perfectly the case I'm working on. The mistake in your alibi also fits. Wouldn't I be foolish to let you slip through my fingers?
But I know nothing of this case, monsieur.
I have a wire in my pocket dated March 10th, 1945, confirming my instructions from our Chicago office. The story fits perfectly. This is it, Mr. Badeau, where you get off.
How did Knox decide that Badeau was his man? In a minute, Knox will tell us how, but first...
Hey BG, are you confused?
Indubitably. I'm not sure if we even have a crime.
Stolen bracelet, I think.
So no one was murdered?
Not that I heard.
What are we trying to solve here?
How the FBI guy knew something or other?
Not much to go on.
Nothing except that they were on a train in March of 1945.
Oh, I get it now.
You do?
The butler did it.
BG, you're amazing.
I am, aren't I?
Not really.
And now, back to the solution of our story.
Being a foreigner who apparently had not done much traveling in this country, Mr. Badeau did not realize that there is no train service through from east to the west coast. There is always a break in Chicago where one has to change to another train. So when Mr. Badeau declared he had not been off the train and had come through from New York, I was pretty convinced that he was my man. And as it turned out, I was right.
Well, at least he was right, which is more than I can say for you.
Then the butler didn't do it.
I don't even think there was one in the story.
Don't all stories from the 40s have butlers in them?
Apparently not.
Did you know that I just quit my job as a butler at a stately home?
Really?
I refuse to be ordered around in that manner.
What's that you said?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. On the show, we get back to the good stuff with all new content. We're going to review a brand new audiobook from the Star Trek series, Strange New Worlds. This is fast becoming one of my favorite Trek series, and I'm loving the characters. Next up, we have two stories from you for you. Both follow the theme of unexplainable voices. Our featured story comes from the OTR series X-1. It is a tale titled Jaywalker, but it should have been titled Things Not to Do with a Spaceship. All in all, I think we have a really good shoe. I want to again thank everyone that sent me notes of encouragement and prayers for my mom. The surgery went well and she is in rehab to start the recovery. I have told her about your support and it has meant a lot to her that you care. My sincere thanks to you all. Now, let's get to the podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, The High Country by John Jackson Miller. I've been a Star Trek fan most of my life. It all started with reruns of the original series way back when, and continues on today with Picard and Strange New Worlds. I've always loved the concepts, the characters, and of course the amazing stories. One thing I didn't expect was that 1, there are Strange New Worlds novels, and 2, they've already been made into audiobooks. So I just had to give one a spin. I picked up The High Country. Here's a clip from the beginning of the book.
Hey, I called shotgun. Spock turned in the shuttle's co-pilot seat and raised an eyebrow. Captain, I do not. Relax, Lieutenant. Coffee cup in hand, Christopher Pike grinned. You're going to say you don't know what an ancient Earth weapon has to do with seating arrangements, and Uhura is going to explain how the expression originated with 19th century stagecoaches. And number 1 will give me the look she's giving me now. Which should need no translation, Lieutenant Commander Una Chin Riley said from the pilot chair. Does it, Cadet? Nyota Uhura smirked. I was going to say there's no record riding shotgun was used before 1900. No written record, anyway. Coach drivers, not big writers. Pike took a seat beside Uhura in the second row and looked forward to his first officer. How's our new baby handling?" "So far as advertised." Chin Riley patted the shuttle's control station. Uhura touched her earpiece. "Starship Enterprise reports only intermittent visual contact with us. Only 3 sensors still detect us." "Good," Pike said. "Maybe we'll get lucky and lose them entirely." Eratosthenes was a shuttle built for the new Prime Directive era of exploration. Shielding protected it from infrared and radar detection, and its thermal and electromagnetic emissions were minimal. Voltage applied to a thin film on the shuttle's skin further controlled what colors it reflected. It wasn't a cloaking device such as the Klingons had used in their recent war with the Federation, but Starfleet didn't want to be in that business. This shuttle was about investigating new civilizations without causing a panic. Its designer, a former Enterprise chief engineer, had sent the prototype to Pike to test. The captain had found an immediate use for it, entering the Bullseye Nebula to approach a planet so obscure neither it nor its parent star had names beyond the surveyor's catalog entries. 500,000 kilometers from FGC-7781b, Spock said. "We are now at the last reported position of the Braidwood." "Full stop," Chin Riley said, reading Pike's mind as always. According to Starfleet, Braidwood was a civilian anthropological expedition that had been out of contact for nearly a year. Its last message, transmitted to the expedition's backers, spoke of the detection by long-range sensors of a society apparently pre-warp on FGC-7781's largest planet. Their supposition was correct, Spock said, consulting his readings. Multiple life forms and artificial structures in concentrated population centers, with smaller ones spread out across rural areas. "City and country," Pike said. "Radio transmissions?" "None detected." Uhura leaned back with a sigh. "I guess I'll just enjoy the ride, then." Pike gave her a reassuring nod. Not every mission could be an adventure for everyone. "Pollution levels minimal," Spock said, reeling off sensor reports as he received them. "A prime candidate for study." The prime is the problem, Pike thought. It was easy to guess what had transpired. Whether their expedition was Federation-approved or not, the Braidwood crew would have been obliged to report their discovery and hold position until a Starfleet survey team arrived to evaluate the planet. Of course, prospectors and colonists could never be convinced to do that, and Pike expected the scientists were no different. They went down to look around and never came back, and their sponsors only now got rattled enough to ask for help. He glanced at Chin Riley. "Sound about right?" "Textbook." She shook her head. "Nobody ever learns." Well, we have, Pike thought. A pre-warp society would not be able to launch a starship like Enterprise, but it might see one overhead. Telescopes on Earth dated back to the 17th century. Eratosthenes, by contrast, was ideal for a recon, safely yielding more information than a probe could. Uhura, signal Enterprise that we're going to establish planetary orbit. We'll scan for the Braidwood from above.
Okay, so when that experimental shuttlecraft fails, Captain Pike suspects a mechanical malfunction, only to discover that the very principles on which Starfleet bases its technology have simply stopped functioning. He and his crewmates are forced to abandon ship in a dangerous maneuver that scatters the party across the strangest new world they've ever encountered. Number 1 finds herself fighting to survive in an untamed wilderness. Uhura struggles in a volcanic wasteland. Spock is missing altogether, and Pike has a chance to fulfill a childhood dream, to live the life of a cowboy. In the saddle, he sets out to go find his crewmates. This is a fantastic story and one well worth the time. The narration is pretty good, but the plot and various adventures the team face make it all worthwhile. Strange New Worlds, The High Country by John Jackson Miller is a captivating science fiction novel that takes the readers on a brand new, exciting journey with Captain Christopher Pike and his crew. This book's strength lies in the story, just like the iconic TV series that inspired it. Now, if any of that appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can have it for free. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering you a free audiobook in 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out the service. This also grants you access to the included catalog, which is constantly updated with new stuff. So, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. And now it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
This story comes from Kansas City, Missouri, and it was sent in by Aline Murray. I'm going to put this one solidly into the head-scratcher category. It defies any sort of logic, and I can honestly say I love it. Aline has titled it An Ordeal at Kay's House. Hello, Ron. This is my only paranormal experience that I can't rationalize. I'm not someone who necessarily believes in ghosts, entities, or whatever. I'm super skeptical, and I generally believe that there is a rational explanation for 95% of all paranormal experiences. I have a BS in psychology, and I'm currently working towards 2 master degrees within the field. With a background like that, I'm familiar with the occasional abnormal nature of the human mind, e.g., auditory and visual hallucinations, delusions, etc., as well as the perceived mental health diagnosis and/or substances that can contribute to these odd experiences. I just want to say I was stone cold sober this day. I have never exhibited any sort of symptoms that would suggest the possible presence of a schizospectrum disorder, a manic hallucination, or simply wanting some attention. I definitely experienced this, and I would love it if anyone has a probable explanation. Here is some necessary context. This takes place in 2015. I was 18 years old at my best friend's house. We'll call him K. At his house, weird stuff frequently happened. It was an old house in KCMO. The experiences include very loud and prominent footsteps, almost stomping, his dogs suddenly becoming aggressive and barking towards an empty room in the house, the shower turning on by itself, and on one occasion there were wet spots of bare footprints leading from the shower into the basement with no explanation. Weird stuff. Regardless, I chalked up all these occurrences and stories to whatever rational explanation I could come up with at the time. Old house, lying, forgetfulness, or stuff just happens. His family even found this weird storage area under a trapdoor in his kitchen. It had a dirt floor, was 6 by 6, and was only 5 feet in height. You had to crouch while in it. They found a cot next to a concrete wall, and it had tally marks drawn in chalk along with some mounds of dirt and trash. They only opened it once and took some pictures of the area. It was creepy as heck, and they had better things to do. If I can find the pictures, I will attach them to this post. Editor's note: sorry, no pictures were sent. So, here's my experience. It was around 6 or 7 p.m., and I had just walked into Kay's house. No one was around, and I began to holler for him to let him and his family know that I was there. There was no response, but I could hear Kay talking to his mother in the laundry room, clear as day. The room was downstairs in the basement. His bedroom was also down there, and the whole area is sort of a U-shape with 2 separate rooms. I walked down the stairs and loudly announced that I'm here. Still no response. I can hear their conversation get louder as I went down the stairs. I heard 2 distinct voices which were clearly Kay and his mom discussing school, work, and things that needed to get done. I decided to let them finish up their conversation and walked straight into his room to the right. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Their conversation continues loud and clear. I stand alone in his room for a full minute or so, checking my phone. Then, something weird happens. Their conversation just stopped. Not like a natural conclusion, but like mid-word sentence stopped. As if someone suddenly paused their conversation like a movie with a remote control. I remember this clearly because how unnatural and artificial it sounded. After it stopped, I immediately felt the most deafening silence. The hairs on my neck stood straight up and my stomach felt heavy. I loudly called out for Kay and then for his mom multiple times. No response, just the heavy silence. I kept calling out their names and walked to where I could see the laundry room. There was no one there, and I was completely alone in the basement. It didn't feel right. It was then my fight or flight kicked in, and I bolted up the stairs as fast as I could. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I frantically and quickly searched the house until I found Kay in his dad's office with the door closed on the opposite side of the house. I immediately asked him if he had been downstairs talking to his mom. He replied that he hadn't been downstairs for the past few hours and that his mom was out of the house running errands. Hearing that made my stomach drop to the floor and my skin crawl. What the heck did I hear then? I couldn't make sense of it. I thought he was screwing with me. I repeatedly questioned him, and he calmly kept reassuring me that he was telling the truth. His mom came home about an hour later. He always swore that his house was haunted, and he told stories about his experiences there. But this was not some strange haunting. To this day, I'm sure it was some sort of paranormal time loop thing. When I told him some of the details of the conversation, he remembered having that exact chat with his mom a few days earlier. It took me a while to be able to go downstairs at his house again, but that was the last time this ever happened. So Ron, what the heck did happen? Aline Murray, Kansas City, Missouri. Well, Aline, first let me say thank you for your story. I like your time loop idea because nothing else makes any kind of sense. And truth be told, that doesn't really explain anything either. This one is the very best example of a head scratcher. Our second story today ties in really well with Aline's. It comes from Zara Abbas, who lives in New York State. I had to edit this one, and I got Zara's approval. She has titled it, "But My Aunt's Not Home." Ron, this just happened today, and I'm freaking out. I have wanted to tell a story on your show for a long time, and this is the one. So, my grandparents' house is haunted. Pretty much my cousins and I believe it. We've all had many experiences where we've heard whistling, seen figures, heard noises, had dreams of people we don't know, or heard mimicking voices. For starters, my aunt and uncle and cousin live here, and they are away on a trip. My grandmother was downstairs with her headphones on, so she couldn't hear anything, and my grandfather was upstairs sleeping. We visit every day at the same time because my sister is autistic. I rang the Ring doorbell. No answer. So I unlocked the door, and then I heard my aunt's voice say, Assalamu alaikum. Editor's note, that is the Arabic greeting meaning, peace be unto you. So I said the greeting back, but then it clicked for me. My aunt's not here. So I said out loud, wait, who said that? My mom also got freaked out because the greeting came from inside the house, in my aunt's room, and it was her voice. So I rushed around the house to see, and she wasn't there. I called my sister and asked if she was back in town and told her what happened. She said no and asked if my aunt could have done it through the Ring app, which she could have. But keep in mind the Ring is very new to them and they haven't really used it before. So I called my aunt. She was still out of town and had no idea that she could even do that. This is where things got really strange. My aunt called me back, and she had checked the app and was able to see that recording. It captured the whole event, including her voice. She was freaked out. For the rest of the visit, I felt the basement was colder than normal, and I felt way too anxious to even go upstairs. I don't know who mimicked my aunt's voice. Could it have been a jinn? But for the record, for it to say, Assalamu alaikum, like that, I'm hoping it was a good jinn. Zara Abbas, New York. Wow, that is a great story, and I thank you for sharing it with us, Zara. Again, I have to say this is another head-scratcher, and I have no idea what to make of it. I, too, have a Ring, and everything you said about it checks out. I don't think that I will ever think of my Ring doorbell the same way ever again. I did get a follow-up note from Zara. She said, I finally saw the video. It's all there, but my father doesn't believe it. He just thinks it's my mom saying the greeting twice. But it's not. Well, that's it for this time. If you have a story that you want to share, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story is simply called Jaywalker. We all know that a jaywalker is someone who walks across the street at a place where it's not allowed or without taking care to avoid the traffic. Recently, I nearly ran over a couple who walked out in front of me from a parked car. Now, I'm not sure why they did it, but the look on their faces, in mine I'm sure, was one of pure terror. The man was sure that it was my fault and let me know how wrong I was. I just breathed in deeply and let out a sigh of relief. So how does that relate to our story today? Well, it takes jaywalking to a whole new level. What if space travel had a problem with jaywalkers? And what form would that take? The story we are about to hear first appeared in the pulp mags under the title Jaywalker. It was written by Ross Rocklin and appears in Galaxy Science Fiction, the December issue, 1950. The tag for this one is, Caution, have you passed your physical examination? Avoiding it may cost your life. What we're going to hear is from the OTR series X-1, and it uses the same title and was an adaptation of the original story. It first aired on NBC on April 17th, 1956. I think you're going to like this one.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come transcribed tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in 1,000,000 could-be years on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, presents
X minus 1.
Tonight's story, Jaywalker, by Ross Rocklin.
Intergalactic flight number 14 now loading at ramp 10. Intergalactic flight number 14 now loading at ramp 10. Please have your flight validation.
You walk from the waiting room down the long ramp numbered 10. The flight pack is in one hand, the validation papers in the other. Other passengers chatter behind you. You turn a corner, and there's the ship. A cylinder of glistening silver aimed at the moon. You feel yourself carried up the moving stair to the gaping entrance lock. A pretty stewardess in a blue uniform smiles at you.
Validation papers, please? Your papers, madam.
Oh, papers? Oh, yes, here they are.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Marcia Foster. You feeling well, Miss Foster?
Yes, quite well, thank you.
We have to make sure. Once in a while, somebody slips aboard with another person's validation papers.
What difference would it make if I felt well or not?
A great deal, I'm afraid. You see, the effect of a free fall in space without gravity can do quite a bit of damage in certain glandular conditions. I see you've passed your physical.
Yes, I'm quite all right.
Fine. Have a nice trip. Your seat number is 15. Next, please.
You walk down the carpeted aisle to the plastic-on seat. Her words make a ringing pattern in your brain. Are you feeling well, Mrs. Foster? Mrs. Foster's feeling quite well, thank you. Mrs. Foster has passed her physical examination. There's only one thing wrong with the picture. You are not Mrs. Foster.
Attention, please. Attention. In 1 minute, the flash walls will be raised around the ship. If for any reason a passenger is not feeling well or does not wish to make the trip, please speak up.
1 minute. You begin to wonder if you ought to go after all. You begin to think of how it happened. Why you're here sitting in this silver vessel waiting to blast off for the moon. What happened between you and Jack? What happened?
Honey, I'm back.
Jack, oh, darling. Oh,
you miss me?
Did I miss you? Oh.
I brought you a little present from the moon.
What is it?
Open it and see.
All right, I will.
Try it on.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It took us 2 hours to pick it out.
Us?
Oh, me and Sue. Sue Egan.
Well, who's she?
Well, the stewardess on the ship.
Oh? Well, how long has she been on the Earth-Moon run?
Oh, I guess it's about a year now.
It's funny you never mentioned her.
Oh, haven't I? Well, what's the difference?
It just seems odd.
Hey.
What?
Well, you're not jealous, are you?
Is she pretty?
Oh, monstrous. 4 feet high and 3 feet around. And she has a big blue eye right in the middle of her forehead.
Oh, you're insane.
Come on, how about a kiss?
No.
Oh, lady, I've been away for 4 months.
Sorry.
I guess I'll just have to go back to Sue Egan and her 3 blue eyes.
In that case, here.
Oh. I have been away a long time.
Jack, I want to talk to you about that.
Okay. But could it wait till tonight? I am taking you to dinner, Mrs. McLean.
I'd rather talk about it now.
Okay.
Jack, we've been married for 6 years now.
Is it that long?
7 in July. For the last 2, you've been skippering that rocket to the moon.
I know.
3 weeks at a time, with only a week in between.
Well, I do get a month vacation
Jack,
besides.
that is no kind of life.
Oh, Marcia, I don't know what I can do about
You
it.
haven't tried to do anything about it.
I guess you're right.
Do you intend to try?
Marcia...
But I need to know.
Marcia, flying is my whole life.
But it isn't mine. I'm not going to spend 3 weeks out of 4 sitting here wondering if you'll come back alive.
Oh, now that's ridiculous.
Is it? What about my father who died on the Elsinore when it missed Mars?
Your father died as the result of a space maneuver that no pilot in his right mind would try.
They missed the planet. That could happen to anybody.
They missed it because they tried to warp the ship around.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
Well, it isn't very hard to understand. A spaceship takes off with everything calculated to the last decimal point. It has exactly enough fuel to take it to a planet if it follows an exact course, an ironclad mathematical orbit.
Well?
Well, there was a jaywalker aboard the Elsinore.
A jaywalker?
Well, that's what we call somebody who boards a ship knowing that he has no business doing so. In this particular case, it was a senator going to a convention on the moon. He had been taking endocrine treatments and kept it secret on his validation papers. He felt he had to attend this convention to muster some votes for his campaign. He didn't consider that he was jeopardizing his life.
Well, I still don't see how they missed the planet.
6 hours out, the senator began to die. The effect of the free fall on his glands was catching up with him. And the only way to reverse that effect is to reverse the spin of the ship, turn it end over end. That creates artificial gravity, reverses the stress on the glands. The pilot took a chance. He did just that.
Is that why they missed the planet?
They lost their trajectory. By the time they recalculated their course, they'd passed Mars. They ran out of fuel and kept going until they fell into the gravity of the sun.
And that couldn't happen today?
A pilot would have to be out of his mind to try a maneuver like that.
You wouldn't try it?
Risk an entire ship to save the life of one fool?
You wouldn't?
Well, Marcia, I can't say I definitely wouldn't. Right now, it's inconceivable to me.
Just as inconceivable for you to give up space flight for my sake.
Isn't it equally inconceivable for you to put up with it for my sake?
I've put up with it for 2 years. Jack, this is the end of it.
Now, what exactly do you mean by that?
I mean you have to decide whether you want a marriage and a family or a career as a space jockey.
Well, why do I have to decide? Why can't I have both?
Because I won't live this way. Nobody else does except a handful of wives whose husbands are crazy enough to have picked a profession like this.
Well, you knew this was my profession when you married me.
I didn't know it was like this.
Marcia, what you're asking me to do, I simply can't do. It wouldn't make you happy if I did. I'd just be walking around resenting you. Now, come on. Let's have dinner and forget this for a while.
No. We're not having dinner.
You'd rather stay home tonight?
No. I'm going to Los Angeles to my mother's house.
What?
I have tickets on the 6:00 flight.
Tonight?
Yes. Jack, I'm quite determined. I'd made up my mind that I'd put it to you squarely, and if you refused, I was leaving.
Just like that?
Yes. I've had all I can take.
Marsh, for heaven's sake, can't we talk this over and make some kind of a compromise?
There is no compromise, Jack. It's all very exciting for you, tearing back and forth to the moon with glamorous stewardesses and all sorts of celebrities, but sitting here waiting isn't much fun for me.
Well, you could get a job, you could develop some interest.
That isn't why I married you. I want a home and a family and a man who comes home every night and talks to me about little, unimportant things.
And I'm not that man.
No. No, you're not.
Okay.
What are you doing?
I don't like people walking out on me, so I'm leaving first.
Would you mind telling me where you'll be?
I don't know. You can reach me through Intergalactic if you change your mind. Marcia, maybe we'll both be better off. We didn't have much of a home life anyway, just the two of us. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I know how you feel about not having children. Goodbye, Marsh.
There it was. You learned when you came back from Los Angeles 2 months later that he'd been seen in the company of one Susan Egan, stewardess for Intergalactic on numerous occasions. You learned, too, that he'd applied for the Earth-Venus run, the newest and most difficult run in the galaxy. And you learned something else, something that was going to change the whole course of your life.
Come in, Mrs. McLean. Sit down.
Thank you, Doctor.
I have some good news for you.
Yes?
You're going to have a child. Well, I thought you'd be happy about that.
Happy? Oh, yes. Yes, I am. Naturally. You debated for a long time, and then you called the intergalactic office. Mr. McLean was out on the Earth-Moon run. He'd be back on the 12th, but only for an afternoon. He was taking off again immediately. They were so sorry. You were sorry yourself. It seemed as if life would not be worth living without Jack, especially now with a child on the way. You had to talk to him, to be with him. That was when you first began to formulate the idea of going to the moon with him on this run.
Attention, please. Attention. We're about to count down for blast-off. Fasten your seat belts and recline back as far as possible. The next sound will be that of the first stage rockets heating up. Do not be alarmed by the vibration of the ship.
From the bulkheads overhead everywhere comes the deep rumbling sound. Some of the passengers look anxious, some excited. Some leaf casually through magazines as they lie on their backs in the reclining seats.
Those of you who've never been in rockets will find it an experience that will make you proud to belong to the human race.
Countdown for blast-off. X -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0.
The rumble heightens. All emotion leaves you. Cold, ravening fear takes over. You try to close your eyes, your ears against it, but your mind won't respond. You look out the port, and the scene is suddenly splashed with a rushing sheet of flame that darkens the sky and is torn from your vision. It's snatched away. The buildings, the trees, the roads vanish. A great, soft, uniform weight presses down on you. You push with all your might, but it smothers you, presses you back, drives your blood down, down inside of you. And then, quiet.
We are now 102 miles over New York City. You may unfasten your safety belt. The pull of gravity will no longer trouble you.
You unfasten the safety belt and sit in the seat, wondering what to do next.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to intergalactic flight number 14 out of New York Rocketport, destination Moon. I'm your hostess, Miss Susan Egan. Your pilot for this flight is Captain Jack McLean. Our position at the moment is approximately 550 miles above Earth, and in less than 1/2 hour, we'll be in free fall, completely without gravity. Our speed is currently 29,000 miles per hour. We should arrive at Moonport at exactly 6 p.m. tomorrow, Earth time. I wish you a pleasant voyage. If there's anything you need, Intergalactic is at your service.
Well, you think to yourself, everybody's here. Your husband, his loved one, and his wife. You watch her as she walks back along the rows of seats with an armful of the latest magazine reportings. A tall girl, about 29 or 30, dark brown hair, dark eyes. Not very pretty. The sort who would be able to talk to him about steam tubes and beautiful landings and solar storms.
Mrs. Foster, would you like something to read?
Oh, thank you, no.
First time in a rocket ship?
Yes, could you tell?
You look a little green. You feeling well?
Yes, I'm quite all right.
There's just a touch of space sickness. Come along to the ship's hospital and we'll fix you up in a jiffy.
No, I'd rather just sit here a minute.
Of course.
Oh.
Come on. Let me help you into the ship's hospital. That's it. Come on, take it easy. Now, come on. Now, you just lie down there. How are you feeling?
I'm scared.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
I think there is.
What is it?
I'm pregnant.
What?
I faked my validation papers.
Do you know what you've done to yourself?
I hoped it wouldn't affect me.
Isn't much I can say, Mrs. Foster. I'll have to tell the captain naturally.
But would it be... could I tell him myself?
If you'd rather. I'll call him. Stewardess to Captain.
McLean, what is it, doll?
Jack, there's a passenger in the ship's hospital.
What's up?
You'd better come down here.
Look, Susie, I've got my course correction
I think you'd better come right down.
Okay. Charlie, take it, will you? I'll be right back.
He'll be here in a minute or two. Here, let me put this pillow under your head.
Thank you.
Now, what made you do it?
You wouldn't understand.
You loved him, and he's stationed on the moon, and you wanted to be near him. Is that it?
Could you understand that?
You mean not being able to have the man you love? Yes. I think I could understand.
You wanted to scream at her, to claw at her face. She was going to live, and you were going to die. She was going to share a life with Jack when you were only a dim sort of memory in his mind. He came in, moving fast with that kind of schoolboy gait of his. His dark face was frowning, but handsome as ever.
Now, just why did you... Marcia, honey.
Hello, Jack.
Well, what are you doing aboard? Sue, this is my wife. Marcia, this is Sue Egan.
Oh, hello. I'll be getting out. Excuse me.
What's going on?
Jack, sit down. I want to tell you something.
I'd like to say something first, Marsh. I've had a chance to do a lot of thinking lately. And if you think we could work it out, I'd like to try again.
You mean that?
Yes, I do.
What about Miss Egan? Sue?
What about her?
Well, I thought... I heard...
I'm very fond of Sue.
Yes, I thought you were.
But she isn't my wife. You are.
Was.
What do you mean?
I'm going to die, Jack.
Marcia, what are you talking about?
Jack, I'm pregnant. You see, we're a little too late.
Did you know this when you came aboard?
Yes.
But weren't you aware that... What about the physical?
I used another woman's validation papers. I paid her for them.
Why, Marcia? How could you do a thing like that?
I don't know. All I knew was that I had to see you. I had to be with you.
If you'd only told me.
I couldn't reach you.
Didn't you know what would happen if you took a rocket flight?
I know. I thought somehow it wouldn't happen to me. I didn't know that pregnancy was affected.
And if you had?
I would have come along anyway.
I suppose in a way I'm to blame. I'm the one who walked out.
Don't take the blame on yourself. I'm over 21.
Marcia, what did you hope to accomplish by this?
I'm not sure.
There's only one possibility.
Possibility?
Yes, excuse me. Miss Egan.
Yes?
Come into the ship's hospital, please. Bring Petrocelli from maintenance. Tell him to come up here with a crescent wrench.
Yes, Captain.
What are you going to do?
Do? Nothing much. I'm going to warp the ship around, that's all.
Petrocelli was a big, easygoing man. Jack left me alone with him and Miss Egan while he went back to the control room. Petrocelli started to bolt a metal bed to the side wall of the cabin. Why are you putting the bed on the wall?
Because, lady, when he starts to spin the ship, that outside bulk is going to be down, not sideways. Centrifugal force, see?
I'm afraid I don't.
Well, that's too bad, because I got other things to do besides explain. Okay, Susie, it's all yours.
Oh, is he always that rude?
Doesn't it occur to you that maybe he's under a slight strain?
Strain?
Look, Mrs. McLean, your husband's going to warp the ship around. The chances of his pulling off a maneuver like that without piling us up in the sun or in deep space are about 1,000 to 1. I appreciate that you wanted to see him and show him that he ought to be ashamed of himself for leaving you, but does it occur to you that all of us may lose our lives because of it? Including Petrocelli?
No, I hadn't thought about it.
Let's go. I've got to strap you into that bed.
No, wait. What will happen to me if the ship isn't warped?
Sudden floods of the adrenal glands, convulsions, panic, spastic secretions, and eventually death.
What causes it?
Lack of gravity. We aren't sure just how. The purpose of spinning the ship is to press you up against the outer wall and create the effect of gravity through centrifugal force.
Do you think he can do it?
I think he's the best skipper in the intergalactic fleet.
That isn't the answer to my question. Can he spin the ship without killing everyone?
I have faith in him.
She loved him. She had faith in him. And you to whom he was married, you who carried his child inside you, did you have faith in him?
Everything set in here?
Yes.
Good.
Jack, could we talk alone for a minute?
Only a minute. We have to get the new data into the computers. Susie, will you excuse us, please?
Yes.
Well?
Jack, don't do it.
Marcia.
I mean it. You've no right to risk all those lives just for me.
Marsh, I'm captain of this ship. I do as I see fit, and I can't do otherwise.
But it isn't fair to them. It isn't fair to you.
When we're born into this life, we don't make any agreement that says everything is going to be fair and equitable.
I refuse to let you do it.
You can't stop me.
I'll take my life.
I'm going to ask Sue to stay with you.
What about her? Don't you love her? Well?
Marcia, whether I love Sue Egan is not the point just now. I've decided to spin ship to save you and my son. Or daughter. If it means risking the lives of others, I have to take that risk.
Jack.
Yes?
Why are you doing it?
Because I love you.
It seemed to me during the next hour through the haze of the drug they gave me that I could see him. There was the curved silver board. Before it sat Jack, hunched like a harried bookkeeper on the last day of the month.
Okay, Charlie. We'll come to the moon obliquely at 0.307. We pass it, stop, spin the ship over once to check speed. Then put the tail down when we feel gravity at 7.035. And if we can do it with the fuel we've got, it'll be a miracle. All right, start the calculators. Engine room, reverse tubes.
Reverse tubes.
Wait for new course vector 7073.
Ready for new course vector.
Set firing formula 2635726.
Firing formula ready.
Coming into course vector. Counting down. 7077. 76.
76.
75.
75.
74.
74.
73. Fire.
You don't recall much after that. There's the bulkhead pressing against you like a magnet, pressing harder and harder. Then there's the needle, and then sudden relaxation. Through it all, the stars and the moon and Jack and Sue Egan dance in a pattern of mist, and the words come back to you from long ago. The things he said to you when you were both in love many years ago.
When I fly the ship, it seems that all Earth watches me through your eyes.
A man comes to love the things he has to fight for, I guess.
How is she?
Hold tight, Marcia. Hold tight to me.
She calls you Marcia. This woman who hates you, who loves your husband. She calls you Marcia.
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 Marcia. Marcia. Marcia.
The curved ceiling, but a new curve. And soft rose instead of chrome metal. A new feeling, unlike Earth or the ship.
Honey, wake up.
Oh. Jack?
It's all right, honey. We made it. We're on the moon.
Moon?
Yes. You're in the new Lunar City Hospital.
You did it. You really did it.
Well, I've been telling you for years that I was the best pilot in the fleet.
Oh, you don't have to pretend. I know how you must feel about what I did.
I'm not pretending.
I was a selfish coward. I wasn't concerned about anything but my own happiness.
Marcia, there isn't any absolute scale for courage or kindness or goodness. I couldn't pretend to judge you or anybody else. I only know that I believe you're a good person. And I love you. With your faults and your good points.
I just wanted to be with you, Jack. That's all I ever wanted. I'm sorry I'm not brave and strong like Susan or you or the others.
Oh, honey, nobody expects you to be. Come on now. You've got to save your strength. We've got to take good care of you.
He reaches down and touches your lips with his fingers. It's like a benediction. You know that you'll never again question his right to do the things that fulfill him. To take a silver ship above the earth and guide it to new planets. Our child will be born on the moon, you whisper to him, and our grandchildren in the stars.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features the Arthur Sellings tale entitled One Across, the story of a man who thought that doing puzzles was an escape, until he suddenly found himself completely boxed in. Galaxy Magazine on your newsstand today. Tonight, by transcription, X-1 has brought you Jaywalker, a story from the pages of Galaxy written by Ross Rocklin and adapted for radio by George Lefferts. Featured in the cast were Bob Hastings, Terry Keane, Raymond Edward Johnson, Connie Lemke, and Eugene Francis. Your announcer, Fred Collins. X-1 was directed by Daniel Sutter and is an NBC Radio Network production.
Pretty great story, I thought. And I'll bet you weren't really expecting that content based on the title Jaywalker, and of course my intro. The story, I think, keyed on the first part of our definition, being in a place where travel is not allowed. Sometimes the rules truly are for our benefit. Now, did you hear those 3 chimes at the end of the show? I'm sure you recognize those as the iconic tones of NBC. But do you know the story behind them? Well, NBC created them very early in the golden age of radio. Back in those days, you had to unplug a cable to switch studios, the sound of which doing so was quite annoying, so NBC would play those 3 tones to mask that transition sound. Think about when you're at a concert and the guitarist plugs into the amp. Eventually, this transfer would be done digitally, so the tones became unnecessary. But NBC kept them, and they even became the first sounds to ever be trademarked. How about that? That was episode number 602, and Aline Murray and Zara Abbas provided some amazing stories for us. I also want to again thank you for all of you sticking with me and listening to the show. It really means a lot. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button helps us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.